I know that my wife is cheating on me. I just know it. But damn it, I can't catch her. It's Saturday morning and I'm sitting with my lawyer. My lawyer, Roscoe Noble, handled my first wife's divorce, so he has experience in these matters. He hired a private detective to check my suspicions. What's wrong with me? My first wife started cheating on me almost before the new sheets came off her wedding bed. Now my new wife does the same. I must have "please cuckold me" written all over my forehead. The private investigator shook hands and introduced himself as Tom Pickens. He was a slightly overweight, short man wearing khaki trousers and a tatty polo shirt. He was unremarkable and would never stand out in a crowd. Probably a good trait for a private investigator. We all sat down. Roscoe said, "Okay, Tom, tell us what you found." Tom cleared his throat. "Yes, sir, Mr. Noble. I started working on this case on Monday morning, immediately after our conversation. I went straight to the college and saw Mrs. Ann Power's car in her assigned parking space. I walked past her office and watched her in her office. I interrupted him. Tom, you can just give us an overview and include the details in your report." Tom replied, "Oh, of course, Mr. Powers." Tom paused to collect his thoughts and then continued. "I kept Mrs. Powers under surveillance all this week until last night. She leaves home between 08:08 and 08:15, goes straight to college and returns home between 16 and 17:30 in the evening. Her daily routine seems fairly normal: conferences with students, faculty meetings, office work, trips to the library, and the like. She usually goes to the gym around 11 and then eats her packed lunch at her desk. There is only one unusual activity. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, Mrs. Powers left the college between 1 and 1:10 p.m., walked downtown, and entered Henry's Continental Restaurant and Gourmet Store. She left there between 3:45 and 4:10. Roscoe asked, "Did she meet someone for lunch?" "Could you identify with whom?" I interrupted. "No. Henry only serves dinner on Tuesday and Saturday. This is one of our favorite restaurants. It is very popular among the academic public." Owner, Henry Manigault. He is an up-and-coming chef and restaurateur. Roscoe asked, "Anything between Anne and Henry? Any hint of attraction, stolen kisses, long hugs, and the like?" "Well, Roscoe, this is the South. Women here kiss and hug everyone as if a 5-second acquaintance were a long-lost uncle or aunt or boyfriend. We all know each other, and there is nothing unusual between them that I am aware of. But then again, I'm just a husband, so I'll be the last to know," I grumbled. "Fine. Is there any reasonably innocent explanation for why Anne spent 3 hours in a closed restaurant 3 times this week?" asked Roscoe. I shrugged and said, "Henry is a nice, sociable guy. He flirts with all the women, including Anne, and they all adore him. So who knows?" Tom interjected. "Well, the restaurant has a gourmet food store that is open during regular business hours and offers cooking classes every other Saturday. However, no classes were held while Mrs. Powers was there. I can't imagine Mrs. Powers having fun for 3 hours in that little store." I added dryly, "I assure you, this is impossible." Anne and fine dining? Definitely terra incognita for her. Tom continued. "I walked around the store several times. I saw no sign of Mrs. Powers. However, Henry Manigault did not appear, and when someone asked him, the saleswoman dryly replied that he was unavailable. I was drawing attention to myself, so I stopped coming in. My wife went there several times on Wednesday. She didn't see Mrs. Powers either." I also charge regular rates for my wife's time," Roscoe said. "That's fair, Tom. No problem." "What else do you have?" Tom sighed. "Not so much. This is a difficult matter. Mrs. Powers has to be the most skilled cheating wife I've ever encountered." "Oh, excuse me, Mr. Powers." I just waved for him to continue. Tom continued. "My wife is doing electronic research and checking the contacts of both Mrs. Powers and Henry Manigault. She couldn't find anything worthwhile for any of them. Henry is single and he always had one or more girlfriends, but there is nothing scandalous about it. Although we don't have any information about his current girlfriend, he definitely looks cheerful and cheerful. Apparently, he didn't have any connections with married women. At least we couldn't find anything. Henry uses an online dating service, but many singles do this. Lately, he has stopped communicating there. Mrs. Power's electronic trail is as clear as freshly fallen snow. We checked the finances. No new credit cards, no personal loans, no problems that credit scoring companies might have, no public records other than Mrs. Powers had a speeding ticket 4 years ago. A clean, decent story in every way. Roscoe looked at me. I said, I did the homework you asked. I went through 3 months of credit card payments and phone records. Nothing that I couldn't explain. I checked her cell phone while she was dozing. No strange messages, no strange calls to unexplained numbers, nothing on her home computer or in her regular or university email accounts. I have all her passwords. She always confuses them and has to ask me to remind her. She's a history student, not a technology guy. I didn't find anything suspicious. Roscoe sat with his lips pursed. Finally, he told me, Jim, what I'm saying is that maybe you're just being paranoid. This is understandable after your experience with your first gold-digger wife. I really like Anne. It looks like you are the perfect couple. But this story with the restaurant is very suspicious. I guess things are not always what they seem. I sighed. This makes no sense. Who would have sex for several hours in a closed restaurant? Getting a hotel room is a hell of a lot more convenient. Or go to his house. He is single. This whole restaurant story just sounds dubious. Roscoe suddenly began rummaging through a folder filled with papers that looked like an accordion. A minute later, he said, Yeah, maybe I have something. Tom told me about visiting Henry's restaurant on Wednesday night. I asked the paralegal to check everything that could be found in the courthouse and city records on Henry. Here's Henry's application for a building permit. A 5-year-old application that includes a layout for renovating the old Johnson's General Store into its current restaurant. Roscoe turned over 2 sheets of floor plans so Tom and I could see them. He continued, Here is the first floor, a culinary store, a restaurant and bar, toilets, a kitchen area, and a warehouse. On the second floor, there is a large classroom, toilets, storage, and here at the back is an area designated as a studio apartment with its own bathroom and shower. We silently looked at the plans, which showed a 1-room apartment. I said, Well, cooks, as you know, work long hours. Maybe it makes sense to arrange an overnight stay there, in the restaurant. But it's also undeniably a comfortable love nest. Roscoe nodded his head. This is true. After a pause, he continued, Jim, I'm afraid Anne is fooling you and entertaining Henry between the sheets. There is no point in gilding the lily. Tom, keep watching. Jim, keep your eyes and ears open on the home front. Anne is a sharp little thing and hides her handkerchief better than most. She will make a mistake. They are always wrong. Then we will squeeze her just like we squeezed your first wife. On the way home, my head was pounding. With my first wife, I think I can understand her cheating. We got married too early and too quickly. She was studying art in her senior year of college when we got married. Beautiful girl. She was also a self-centered society girl, not to mention the fact that she definitely expected a high standard of support when becoming a wife. As for me, I come from a simple construction family. I was a civil engineering major and working on my MBA when we got married. My father was drafted to Korea. He was an Army engineer, and he came back and went to Clemson through his draft. He then scraped together enough money to buy a concrete plant and made a small fortune in the post-war boom years. I now realize that my first wife saw me as dollar signs and not a lifelong partner. She got more in the divorce than she ever would have gotten with her BA. Dad had a stroke a few years ago, and I ended up running a concrete company. I brought modern engineering and business practices to an already successful company. We grew up and are now damn rich. My sister went to law school, and with all the construction litigation and inevitable involvement in our affairs, she became quite a wealthy construction law guru in her own right. My first wife must be kicking herself for not being more careful and waiting until the marriage tree had a more lucrative financial plum. But my current wife, Anne, I just can't believe she's unfaithful either. We've been married for a little over 2 years. She is 8 years younger than me, but she is a smart, mature woman with a good head. She has a doctorate in history and has been working as an assistant professor at a local college for 4 years. We met at a Methodist Sunday school class for single adults shortly after she arrived in town. After dating for a year, we got engaged and then married 6 months later. We had a good time, got to know each other, met each other's friends and families. We did everything right. Damn it, I swear my family likes her more than me. Anne is my best friend. The sex is great. The family is friendly. I actually do all the cooking because Anne, God bless her, is a terrible cook. She spent her time becoming an academic muse rather than a domestic goddess. In January, Anne finished her book on the Yemasei Indian Colonial War. We all expected this to be typical boring stuff from an academic history professor. I read this book as part of my marital duty and was shocked. Anne has a gift for telling a story as if it were a novel and bringing that long-ago tragedy to life. I read all of this on Saturday. Damn, this is great. The book was also liked by the professional and popular press. Anne has been interviewed by NPR and several local television stations. She has even been invited to several book awards and signs many books and gives talks. Anne is over the moon with the success of her book, but she earned it through hard work. She jokes that when all the royalties are added up, she will publish the book for less than half the legal minimum wage. However, the book and its professional and popular reception were a major factor in Anne's expected promotion to assistant professor, perhaps the following year or immediately thereafter. But having burned myself on the milk, I blew on the water. Anne exhibits the classic signs of a cheating wife. Working so hard on her book, she's put on a few extra pounds. Not that I was stupid enough to mention it to her. The book came out in January, and she started working out at the gym in February. Now, in July, she is in the best fighting shape I have ever seen her in. She looks very good. Her first royalty checks were spent on some attractive, sexy outfits and lingerie. She laughed and said she was spoiling herself. This is out of character for her, as she is an old-fashioned Methodist curmudgeon. She teased me, "Don't I love seeing her in new lingerie? I'm certainly delighted. But I wonder who else is enjoying the sight of my wife in this sexy lingerie." She is also very affectionate. Is it just a release from the pressure of writing a book or a guilty conscience? Anne isn't teaching this summer, but she still goes to her office every day. She's working on initial ideas for a second book, which she's telling me about. She also has 3 graduate students writing their dissertations, so she has to work with them several times a week. But still, in summer its load is small. The week before last, we finished a large government road paving project early, and I had a free day, which is rare during the construction season. I stopped by the university to see if I could lure Anne home for an afternoon of bedroom aerobics, an offer she would normally jump at in a matter of minutes. She wasn't in her office, so I stopped by the history department's main office to see if she was there. 2 students were copying and putting together some professor's massive paper project at the front desk. I asked, "Hello? I'm looking for my wife, Professor Powers. Have you seen her by any chance?" The 2 girls looked at each other, holding back their smiles. The blonde replied, Yes. She was here recently. She said she was going to the library. As I closed the door behind me, I heard the girls unsuccessfully trying to hold back their laughter. Hell, even the kids know she's cheating on me. I walked through the library and, of course, there was no Anne there. That evening, as I poured each of us a glass of Shiraz for happy hour, I casually mentioned, "We finished early today, so I came to see you in the afternoon, but you weren't there." The girls at the reception said that you just went to the library. I watched Anne closely. She tensed for a moment, and a light blush appeared on her cheeks and neck. She looked away as I handed her a glass of wine. "Oh, I'm sorry I missed you. Yes, I try to spend a few hours every day in the library, researching materials for my new book. I didn't show that I had caught her in an outright lie. They're taking me for a fool. 2 years after marriage is the best time for a young wife to get bored and begin to cast glances, and perhaps more, beyond the boundaries of the marital fence. Is she cheating now, or am I just being paranoid?" I know the answer. I arrived home and the rest of Saturday passed quietly. I did some chores in the yard. Anne was speaking at a bookstore in Augusta, or so she told me. It is quite possible that she is now having a passionate affair with her lover. When Anne returned home at 6, we went to a friend's house for a nice evening and dinner. Everything seems great, but my stomach flips every time I look at my cheating wife. We got up Sunday morning and went to early church. We skipped Sunday school and I made an omelet for brunch. We enjoyed it while we looked through the newspaper together. Anne made her surprise announcement at me as we finished our coffee. She gave me a mischievous smile, which in the past always foreshadowed some crazy, funny idea, usually sexual. Now I'm just wondering with whom. Honey, I want the house to be at my disposal from 1 to 6 today. Why don't you go play golf? You haven't had this opportunity for a long time, and I want you to be home at 6 sharp. I will have a surprise for you. I stuttered in complete confusion. What? Anne, why? She just laughed cheerfully. Well, stupid, if I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? Now grab your clubs and golf shoes and go have some well-deserved fun. I wasn't in the mood to argue, so I grabbed my golf equipment and headed out. On the way to the country club, I called Tom on his cell phone and assigned a private investigator to watch the house until I returned. I chatted with 3 guys at the club, and we played a round of golf. My lack of practice and scattered mental state took its toll, and, like a loser, I bought a drink on the 19th hole when we were done. It was actually a nice and relaxing day that lifted my sour mood. As I prepared to go home, I wrote to Tom, who was watching my house and Anne's. Is there anything? Tom's answer followed immediately. Nothing. It's quiet, like in a cemetery. Mrs. P went out to the trash can one day, that's all. What's happening? Did she notice our observation? Is she really such an impudent whore that she sends me off to play golf while she takes her lover right under our noses? Our house is adjacent to a forest parking lot, and her lover, of course, could have slipped behind her unnoticed by Tom. She's a really smart girl and obviously cunning as the devil. Will I come home and find Henry there? Am I being kicked out, or has my marriage suddenly become one of those modern, open agreements? Who knows what this woman is capable of? I arrived home at 6, as ordered. I opened the front door and was greeted by Anne, who handed me some tape and said, "Just in time? Fine. I saw you drive up. Here's the drink. Come in. Sit down at the table. I have a surprise for you." Anne was excited and running on high octane. I have no idea what she's up to, and it all baffles me. It's just like the good old days when we first got married. She pushed me towards my seat at the table. The table was set with our finest silver and china, with red wine already poured into our crystal. The candles on the table were lit, creating a festive mood in the room. At least there wasn't a third place at the table. "Stay here and enjoy your scotch." Anne rushed to the kitchen. I couldn't imagine what my crazy wife was doing. 5 minutes later, she returned, bearing covered plates that were accompanied by a delicious aroma. Despite my suspicions about Anne, I couldn't help but laugh. "What the hell are you up to?" I said, as Anne quickly set the plates of food on the table. Anne took the lid off my plate, struck a pose, and said, "Voilà, bœuf à la bourguignonne," with excellent French pronunciation. "Julia Child says this is the most delicious beef dish ever prepared by man. Have you prepared this?" "It can't be," I said, laughing. "Anne can't cook a hot dog, let alone French haute cuisine." "But I prepared this," Anne exclaimed, pretending to pout her lips. "Henry Manigault is giving me cooking lessons this summer." "What?" was my stunned answer. While Anne quickly handed out the food, she chatted happily. Henry's niece, Jean, was working on her master's thesis with us, and her supervisor suddenly had to take time off for chemotherapy. At the last minute, I picked up the girl and worked with her on her dissertation. Anne was silent for a moment. "She's a really sweet girl. Either way, we had to scramble, but we got it done and got through the system. She graduated right on schedule last May. Henry came up to me at graduation to thank me for helping his niece. He said he overheard you all teasing me at the restaurant because I couldn't cook. He said he wanted to give me cooking lessons as a thank you for Jean's help." Anne shrugged and continued chatting. In the summer, I have free time, so I went to him for cooking lessons at his restaurant several times a week. It was a little scary at first, but it's actually a lot of fun. This dinner is my debut in the culinary world. I should call Henry later and tell him how it went. If you like it, he is ready to continue training and is going to significantly expand my knowledge of the art of haute French cooking. How about this? I really do have the wife I always hoped for, and now she can cook to boot. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. Listening to the next one.